Hey guys, this is Jerry. So about a week ago, I had a little argument with my dad. You see, I'm doing pretty well right now. I got a good job, I have friends, I'm finally in the city I want to be in. But my dad is still unhappy with where I am. He says, Jerry, man, you'd do better if you had a grad school degree, if you got a master's, if you got a PhD. And it used to really anger me when they said something like that, but as of now, I'm pretty calm. I try to tell them, no, there's much better things I can do to invest in myself. Getting a grad school degree, getting in debt, taking the opportunity cost of 2 years of not going for your career but being in academia, it's not worth it, especially for a guy like me that wants to be in media. I am in media, but I want to keep being in media. And he just didn't get it. I was going to the beach that day. He called me when I was on the subway. It pretty much ruined my night. I wasn't able to have fun at the beach because it's like my parents still, one, don't approve and still think that I'm fucking up. And so I said, what can I do to turn this kind of sadness into something productive? So I wrote a list of breaking down the problems with Asian parenting. I think me, first generation immigrant, I came from China when I was 10, and having grown up with parents who, were PhD, MD people who came here because of their academic talents, I think living under that kind of environment just has given me a little insider view. And many people talk about Asian parenting. I'll tell you my experience and my analysis of why Asian parenting, especially towards Asian males, creates these either very unconfident or really neurotic or just people who feel a little, I don't know how to describe it, it's not oppressed, it's just feel a little not ready for the real world almost. It's like, for me, I spent a lot of time trying to learn about everything, whether it's human behavior, whether it's about how the world really works. And it's because of that I've gotten so far in life. My parents, if anything, just pigeonholed me, and I'm not gonna pass the blame on them because they're just doing what worked for them in a different culture, in a different time. But I really felt that my parents' parenting style did me a huge disfavor. So the first problem about Asian parenting is what I called upward social comparison. In psychology, there's a concept of how you compare yourself with other people. Do you compare yourself with people who are better at you at a specific task or a specific trade? Or do you compare yourself to people who are below you at a certain task and a certain trait? And if you can think about this rationally or logically, people are happier if they compare themselves to people below them. It's like, look at all I got. Some people have worse than me. I'm happy where I am, right? First generation Asian parents always engage in upper social comparison. And it's not just about academics, it's about other things too, but academics are a big part of it. Your kid got an A. Oh, well, that's not good enough. He should have gotten an A plus. This kid got an A plus. I remember in middle school, my parents were always like, yeah, that kid right there, he's Chinese like you. He always gets better scores than me. Even though I only got one B in middle school. I only got one B in middle school. It was an art class because the teacher really disliked me. I was very rambunctious and she didn't like me. This kid got straight A's. He got an A in art class. It was always engaging in upward social comparison academically. And it's the same in other things. My mom would always say to my dad, oh man, this Asian family's house is bigger than ours, or this Asian family, oh my God, they take this amount of trips per year, or this Asian family, they make this much more money than we do. So when you hear that all the time from your parents, you're never gonna be happy with any of your accomplishments because you're always thinking like, oh my God, I could do better, I could do more. And this is especially the case with colleges. Asian parents, man, they get together. Yeah, my kid's at Harvard. Ooh, my kid's in Yale. My kid's in Penn. And one day, if my parents and I have an argument, I'm gonna call this like 5 years down the line. They're gonna be like, well, guess what, Jerry? You only went to Penn. If only you went to Harvard, you would have done so much better with life. They're gonna say some shit like this. And My dad wanting me to get a PhD, getting a master's because he thinks it's going to help my career. It goes down to this upward social comparison. A lot of his colleagues, their kids probably have a PhD in some STEM field or something like that, or a master's in STEM field. So he feels a little inadequate. My kid should have that too. I mean, he says it's because he wants me to be more competitive in the real world, but I've told my dad this so many times, the real world is not really about a piece of paper. It is, but it's more about if people like you or not. The second problem with Asian parenting is what I call locus of control. In psychology, there's a concept of how much control you think you can affect in the world, in your surroundings. So if I have an internal locus of control, that means I think through my actions, my behaviors, my thoughts, can influence a lot of the world. If I have an external locus of control, I think other people, other things control most of the outcomes of my actions. And I think any rational person will know it's a mixture of both, right? Some things are out of our control, some things are in our control. Asian parenting stresses the internal locus of control. If you do something well, it's always because of you. If you do something badly, it's always because of you. That's inherently something that Asian parenting teaches you. You see, I've interviewed for many, many different types of jobs, and sometimes I don't get them. Now, 80% of the time it is my fault. I didn't do well in an interview, but 20% of the time it's not my fault. They just didn't like me. And one time there was a job that was pretty good and I didn't get it. And my parents were like, yeah, why did you get it? You see, this is why you shouldn't be in media. This is why you should go to grad school. And I told my parents, first of all, it's just one thing. Second of all, it was out of my control. They didn't like me. And my parents just wouldn't accept that explanation. They thought I did something wrong. Yeah, it's all, maybe the way you talked to them, maybe the way you dressed. And it could have been, but I knew everyone else liked me. So it's the last guy didn't like me. And maybe it's partly my fault, but he also just didn't vibe with me. So it's not completely my fault. And you see this in every aspect of life, whether it's middle school, high school. Asian parents are always like, yeah, well, why didn't you get an A? Maybe the test was too hard. Well, you should have studied harder. Well, maybe the teacher just put a lot of tricky questions on the test. But that would never fly. If you're arguing with your parents are like, well, you should have anticipated it. If only you were smarter. Well, you were smarter, man. What, you're so dumb. And that's another thing about how Asian parents talk to their kids. Just a general parenting advice. You don't want to put down your kids like that, Oh my God, why are you so dumb? Oh yeah, blah, blah, blah. That kind of put down is not very good for the kid's self-esteem. So far we've talked about upward social comparison and internal locus of control. Already these two things are causing anxiety in a kid. The third problem with Asian parenting is defeatism, or maybe it's pessimism. But basically it's whatever happens, whatever decision your kid makes, or even whatever decision you make as an Asian parent, you think the worst is going to happen. I see this so much. I remember when I first came out to LA in 2012, my mom would always call me, yeah, Jerry, what if you can't find a job? Huh? What are you going to do? It's like telling me all the negative shit that could ever go wrong. And I got so frustrated with my parents because it's like, first of all, I'm considering these things. I know these things. Like, I don't need you to remind me of, as my parents, if you can't give me productive, constructive advice, don't go all defeatist. Don't assume I'm going to fail and keep telling me that. And I've heard many stories. One of my favorite stories, I have a friend, his brother has a startup, and their father found out that the brother was starting a business. Yeah, you're going to fail. First generation immigrant Asian parenting. If you don't stick to the defined path, which is go to school, get a higher education degree that's beyond a master's, and stick to STEM fields or potentially stick to the government, you're going to fail. Absolute defeatism. There's going to be ups and downs, but I'm going in the general right direction. But every time there's a down, even though I'm going in the right direction, they automatically assume the worst. Yeah, you're going to fail, you get fired, you're going to lose your job, you're going to get depressed, and then, yeah, Jerry, you're going to come back home. That's not healthy. And When you grow up with that kind of defeatist parenting, it affects your self-esteem. So we've talked about locus of control, social comparison, defeatism. The fourth problem with Asian parenting is they destroy your ego. They purposely try to knock you down. It's about humbleness, but Asian culture's too humble. They don't know how to talk themselves up. So let's say you do something well. Your parents are gonna do like, yeah, but you see you have all these other things you can work on. See, going upward, social comparison again. Oh, you did well, yeah, but you see that guy can do this way better. Or, oh, you got 100, but that guy's gotten 100% on 3 of his tests already. Can you beat him? Or my dad used to say this to me all the time, senior year of high school. Jared, man, all your teachers like you. I think they treat you too well. It's getting to you. And it's like, I'm a good student. That's why my teachers like me. I like to think outside the box. That's why they like me. But no, he has to knock me down. Think all I care about is myself. I'm selfish and I'm self-centered and the teachers like me. And I just use that and disrespect people. That's what they think. And the final problem with Asian parenting is what I call tunnel vision. And this is because first generation Asian parents fall into 2 categories primarily. One category is went to school, became the best of their class, came over in the STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. And they came over because they were so qualified, and that's how they immigrated. Second population of first generation Asian immigrants came over as business people. So they managed restaurants or did some of the hard work. So the first group, the STEM people, think that's the only way to go. That's the only way to be happy. The second group knows how hard it is to be in America, and that affects their interpretation of America. So the end result, both groups want their kids to focus so hard on academics and nothing else. So you grow up in an Asian family, you're lucky if they sign you up for one sport. You're always gonna play the violin. I remember this one Asian parent told me, yeah, I signed my kid up to play the saxophone, but I think I'm gonna make him stop because I'm afraid that the saxophone's gonna get him a bunch of girls and then he's gonna end up not focusing on his studies. And I just facepalmed myself. I'm like, first of all, learning the saxophone's good. Second of all, what's wrong with interacting with girls? And third of all, both of those things do not mean he's gonna just fail at every class. But that's the Asian mentality, tunnel vision. Don't get a girlfriend, or if you get a girlfriend, make sure you still get straight A's. Ooh, don't go to parties. Oh, don't do this, don't do that. Focus on academics, 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 academics. You're lucky if you break out of it in college and then, you party hard in college, or you learn to find a balance in college, but sometimes you don't. You still listen to your parents in college, and then you enter the real world. You don't know how to have fun. You don't know how to take risks, and you don't know how to speak out when it's your turn to speak out, because it's always tunnel vision. It's always keep your head down, do this thing. With the tunnel vision and the defeatism from your parents and the fact that you think everything should be in your control, and then you're always comparing yourself up, especially as an Asian guy, how are you gonna handle life? And the world is a cruel place, and if you didn't have that nurturing environment, if it was always critical, always defeatism, always tunnel, how are you gonna learn your confidence? It takes years to unlearn a lot of these bad things that you learned in your mind and then become productive and functional and awesome in life. And a lot of times for Asian women, they end up hating on their culture, and they end up going for the white guys or talking trash about Asian guys. That's just their way of sort of dealing with it. But that's another rant for another time. I welcome your comments. If you think I'm wrong in any of these things about first generation Asian immigrant parents, please let me know too. If my parents ever see this, you guys did all right. You guys just did what you thought worked. Parenting is hard, and every parenting style has its problems. But if we don't analyze what's wrong with a certain parenting style, a certain population will always feel the weight of it and not be able to live to their full potential until years later than they should, so to speak. So I thank you guys for listening, and I will talk to you guys next time.